Recently, a series of tweets about Google and Chromium have been making the rounds on Hacker News, Reddit, Mastodon, and a bunch of other places. So Google Chrome gives all star.google.com sites, so every site on the google.com domain, things like meet.google.com, google.com, and a bunch of other things, full access to system/tab CPU usage, GPU usage, and memory usage. It also gives access to detailed processor information and provides a logging back channel. This API is not exposed to other sites, only to star.google.com. Now, considering Google's history with privacy and how people generally feel about them, this is a pretty easy thing to believe. But what I've noticed is there's a lot of people who stop reading this tweet and are left very confused on what's actually happening and are kind of just filling in the gaps with things that they think might be happening or other people think might be happening. And even if you don't stop at just this one tweet and you read this one thread, there's still going to be a lot of context left out. So let's talk about what's actually going on. One of the examples provided here is with Google Meet. Take, for example, Zoom. They are now at a disadvantage because they cannot provide the same CPU debugging feature as Google Meet. What feature are we talking about? OBS did not like me opening Meet, so I'll fix this in just a bit. Right now we are running on Firefox. If we go to the three dots here, go to Troubleshooting and Help, here we can see Connection Delay. Try Google Chrome to see your connection delay. Also, CPU usage, try Google Chrome to see your CPU usage. I don't have Chrome installed, but I can try it in Chromium. Once again, click on the three dots, Troubleshooting and Help. This time, we do see a graph for the connection delay and also a graph for the CPU usage. Okay, that tells us that something is happening, but it doesn't tell us everything we need to know. What if there was a way to call the API yourself to check the data? Well, some savvy individuals worked out exactly how to do that. Full credit to Simon Willison with this command right here. Here we have inspect element on google.com. If we go and paste that in, run it, we get some information back. Okay, it tells us our architecture name, the features of the CPU, the name of the CPU, the number of processors, and then gives us information on the usage of the CPU. Okay, if everybody can do this, no problem whatsoever. So this time we have the Arch Wiki, let's try it again. Okay, that is different. Maybe it's just a coincidence. Let's go to the Gentoo Wiki and try the exact same thing. The same error message. Well, let's try meet.google.com again, this time with the command instead. And again, we get basically the same information. So something is clearly happening here on Google-specific domains. How about we instead try YouTube? This time we get the same error message that we saw on things outside of google.com. So if you don't consider YouTube, it looks like a clear-cut case of Google being bad, and maybe they still are, but it's certainly not as simple when you consider YouTube. Now, with this command we are running, keep an eye on this string right here. This is going to be very important in just a moment. Okay, the first point we need to clear up is the fact that this is not a new thing that Google is doing. This is not even a remotely recent thing they are doing. What this is coming from is the Google Hangout extension that you have installed in your Chromium-based browser. And you're probably thinking, I never installed the Google Hangout extension. I have no idea what the Google Hangout extension is. But you did install it, you just didn't realize it. When you install the browser, you install the extension because since October 24th, 2013, the extension has been bundled with Chromium. It says Chrome here, but it actually means the upstream Chromium repo. Now, back when this first happened, it was being treated like a regular extension, like Bitwarden, like uBlock Origin, or anything else you might want to use, where you actually have the extension icon there, you can go and uninstall it. at a later point in time, that icon got hidden and it was just silently being bundled. Back to that string of characters I mentioned earlier. What is this string? This is the extension ID right here, and from here we can see a bit more information. This is what it matches on, star.google.com. Every domain under google.com, and we can also see the permissions given to the extension, with the one that most people are talking about here, system.cpu. Now it also has things like desktop capture, and this gets back into it being a Google Hangout extension. This extension was made basically to ensure that Google Hangouts could actually function. The web is a very different beast today than it was 10 years ago. And there was a time where, to make certain websites like this function, you would have to install a specific extension for that website, otherwise the website just wouldn't be able to get the permissions it actually needs. It just so happens, though, that some additional things were bundled with it that it probably shouldn't have access to. There's not really a reason why it needs to know what CPU you have or what your CPU usage is. Yes, you could argue it can maybe, adjust the video quality based on your CPU usage, but there's easier ways to do this, and it's probably better just to let the user control it if they feel like there is a problem on their end. But here is my main point. What this extension is doing, what this extension is making possible, is something that any other extension developer and any other website developer is capable of doing. If you make an extension with the same permissions as this, the one that we mainly care about, system.cpu, you can get the exact same information. However, the situation is a little bit different, because if you're some random website, you have some video call app, I don't know, your Zoom or Jitsi, you have to convince the user to go out of their way to go and download an extension and keep that extension installed. Whereas if you also develop the browser, say your name is Google, and you have a video calling app, you don't have to convince anyone to do it because you can just go and automatically bundle it with every single browser user. Your competitors do not have that luxury. As such, some people like Luca argue that maybe this runs afoul of EU law. This is interesting because it is a clear violation of the idea that browser vendors should not give preference to their websites over anyone else's. The DMA, Digital Markets Act, codifies this idea into law. Browser vendors, as gatekeepers of the internet, must give the same capabilities to everyone. Depending on how you interpret the DMA, this additional exposure of information only to Google properties may be considered violation of the DMA. Now, as we've established in plenty of other videos, I am not a lawyer, as you can probably tell. But the basic idea is because on Google domains, they have this additional information. If they have something like meet.google.com, this has a potential competitive advantage over something like Zoom. I will let the lawyers sort all that stuff out. It seems compelling to me, though. But hang on for a second. This entire time, I've been saying Google Hangout extension, not Google Meet. Google Hangout and Google Meet are two completely separate services. In fact, Google Hangout doesn't exist anymore. It got cancelled back in 2022. So this extension that was made for Google Hangouts hasn't been removed. It's still in the browser. It still exists today. Google Meet does not need it to function, but it provides the information that they want. So keep it around, I guess. Now, instead of just freaking out about what was going on, one person here decided to reach out to someone actually involved in Chromium-based browser development and ask what was going on, because maybe there's something that they don't know. Someone wanted pinged Brendan Ike of the Brave project. Now, in the case of Brave, previously, the Hangouts extension is enabled by default on desktop to make sure Google Hangouts works as expected on Brave. They do disable log uploading to Google servers though, because that doesn't need to be there. However, very importantly, you could toggle it off with the switch in your extension settings. Now, after all of this went down and these tweets went semi-viral and everybody is talking about them, Brave did change the way they were doing this. This was enabled by default because it was needed for Google Hangouts. Everyone kind of just forgot that Google Hangouts doesn't exist now because Meet and Hangout are basically the exact same service and nobody even realizes there was a difference. So now there's been a recent pull request in the nightly build to completely disable the extension. Now, obviously, they did some testing to make sure Meet was actually working, but we know it was working because Firefox and Safari didn't bundle the extension and Meet works just fine. The only thing that was broken is that graph that I showed you earlier. Also, when it comes to building Chromium, so you're actually trying to compile it, this isn't something that you are forced to compile into Chromium. You have the option to go and disable it if you want to. There is a compile flag to decide whether or not you want it. The flag being used is Enable Hangout Services Extension, and this is the Arch Linux build, which has it set to true. Now, the reason Arch sets it to true is because it just makes sense to set it to true. You don't know what other things it has, what other things it's doing, but you know it needs to be enabled to make sure that Hangouts is going to be working. Again, nobody even realizes that Hangouts is dead. If you were using it, you got migrated over to Meet, and it seems exactly the same. So if you are on Arch and you don't want the feature, it's easy enough to just go and grab the package build, disable that one setting, and then compile it yourself, and now the extension is gone. As for other distros, whether or not they enable it by default, I know that Fedora does, Debian doesn't. I don't know why Debian doesn't. I know Debian is just weird and random about things they do, but I know that Debian does not compile the extension in. As for other Chromium-based browsers, unless they are specifically mentioned as being ungoogled, like ungoogled Chromium, for example, which gets rid of everything even slightly Google services related, it's probably going to be there. Chrome obviously has it enabled. Edge has it enabled. Vivaldi, I'm pretty sure, has it enabled. I've not seen anyone do testing on Opera GX, but it's probably enabled. However, much like in Brave, Vivaldi does have a toggle in the settings to go and disable the extension, so you still can get rid of it in that browser. So if you are using Brave or Vivaldi, don't feel like you have to swap to another browser just because of this one extension. Now, if you're a Chrome or an Edge user, I don't know why you're a Chrome or an Edge user, but this is just another thing you get for being a Chrome or an Edge user. Now, what is completely unclear to me is whether or not this information is being used for anything besides just doing some troubleshooting in Meet. Is the data being collected by Google to do Google things with it? Because here we have an incognito Chromium window. If we go into Inspect Element and use that command from earlier, it is going to work. So if you see a computer connecting from the same IP address with the same CPU, it's pretty trivial to guess that that's probably the same person. Is it a guarantee? No, but no fingerprinting is a guarantee. It's just a little bit more information to make it a more educated guess. I cannot confirm one way or another if Google is actually doing that. But it is Google, so would you be surprised? Now, just in case anyone is wondering about things like sites.google.com, user pages are not actually hosted on sites.google.com. Instead, they are under Google user content, and as we saw from YouTube, that's not included in the list of matching sites. Whilst I cannot say why this is being done, why it wasn't removed, I hope you have a better understanding of what is going on. So if you liked the video, go like the video down below. and if you really like the video and you want to become one of these amazing people over here, check out the Patreon, Scribes, and Liberapay, linked in the description down below. Also, let me know your thoughts down below as well. Forgot my outro. I'm out.